Okay. Good morning once again. Good morning. Good morning. We are continuing with our morning session. We had a session where we were focusing on focus versus distraction. And today we are going to focus, or this hour, we are going to focus on reflection. We're going to reflect on what we talked about earlier. Earlier, we talked about how distraction comes in. Let me just get my notes. Sorry about that. Let me just get my notes and I look at what we looked at today. Okay. So we're continuing with breaking cycles through intentional attention. Okay. And we looked at what focus is and why distraction appears. And we defined what focus means, and we said clearly focus is not productivity, focus is not doing more, no, it is alignment. And distraction only appears when there is direction. Okay, so this morning we're really just going through what focus is. I'm not going to go through that again, but briefly we looked at how focus is directly at attending to your alignment. Okay, are you aligned to your purpose? Because energy is very intentional. Okay, when you are focused, you are moving very clearly. Cycles begin to weaken. That's what happens when focus comes in. Okay, as long as you are consistently applying the direction that you have received, then focus will enable you to get to where you want to go. But and by the way, the irony is when you have clarity, it is going to threaten comfort. Nothing is birthed out of comfort. There has to be a stretch on your core, on your brain, on your mind. There has to be a little bit of pain for you to get something out of it. Okay? So clarity is going to threaten that comfort. And you will realize growth at the end of the day, because growth is what demands change, and the old patterns are going to be weakened. They're going to fall off slowly by slowly. So welcome to this channel, Build Beyond You. We are all about rediscovering our identity, building our human blueprint, and stepping into our true leadership authority. And we have been having 23 to 25 days of classes, breaking cycles, looking at how do we overcome the different negative behavioral patterns that affect us daily, that hinder us from flourishing in our true identity. And these hindrances and blockages that we find now, we pick them up as we go along, or we inherit them through generational patterns. We looked at their root causes of all these negative behavioral patterns. And then we looked at, in detail, we looked at unhealed trauma, we looked at dishonor, we looked at the different root causes of all these. And then we went on ahead to look at what happens, what do the root causes target. They target your identity and what is being weaponized, the different defense mechanisms that we usually go to, like immorality. Those are all defense mechanisms or weaponized tools that are used to target your identity. And at the end of the day, you have a wounded identity or um, a fragmented identity. And when you have a fragmented identity, that means whatever you build on the outside is going to either be broken or will have a fracture. It will not be as whole as it would be if you are building from an identity that is whole. And when we are rediscovering our identity, we get to a point of healing, restoring, recovering, looking at what are those belief systems that we've picked on along the way and how can we pull them down. Okay. In the recovery and restoration process of your identity is when you learn new belief systems, you structure your innate abilities, and you start using them to your advantage. And then you look at all these other vices that directly affect your identity, directly affect your leadership authority, directly affect the decisions that you make, your choices, your direction. So today we are looking at focus versus distraction. How do we break the continuous cycles, destructive cycles that take us away from focusing on what we want to actually focus on? In the morning, we really looked at focus, focus, focus. Okay. Now, when it comes to old patterns being challenged, that is, distraction does not want you to transform. So it resists transformation, but it's entirely up to you. Whatever you are in control of as a person, you need to say that I'm going to put aside distractions and I'm going to fix my eyes on focusing on what I am supposed to do. Okay. Most of us think that distractions are mainly external, but no. Distractions most of the times come from inner conflict. Okay. So you should ask yourself, what exactly am I dealing with? Am I having some internal dialogue that's conflicting? What are those voices that you are allowing yourself to listen to and actually follow their prompts? Okay. Distractions also come from a fear of responsibility, a fear of consistency. Because every time you try to be consistent on doing something or on achieving something, the distractions come. And when resistance come or distractions come, you step away from that. Now, that is the one thing that you need to pay attention to. Name the distraction, acknowledge what exactly that distraction is, and then have a very clear framework of understanding of what exactly this distraction is. Because if you do not have an understanding of what the distraction is, you won't be able to deal with it. You need to know, where is it coming from? What is the root cause? What are the patterns that you can clearly see or that you have marked or you have noticed over time that lead to this distraction when it's coming? With time, when you are used to noting the negative patterns as they come or as they surface or as they manifest in your life, you'll be able to know, "Mm-mm, this is a negative pattern that has led me to these mistakes that I have made. I'm not going to even allow it to go past this." It could be a voice, it could be an environment, it could be people, influences. Okay. So distraction fights focus because focus is what ends cycles. And that's what we're looking at in the morning. Focus ends those negative behavioral cycles. When you say, I'm not going to, I choose not to be distracted, I choose to be focused on what I am doing, it will fall off. They'll just fall off. So, focus requires direction, okay? And don't allow yourself to be a breeding ground for distraction, because when you allow yourself to be a breeding ground without saying no to this, putting boundaries here and all, you're going to you're going to have repetitive cycles. So you have to be able to see the distractions for what they are, define them, name them, acknowledge them, have a clear framework of understanding of how they come in, and put a stop to them. Whatever is in your power to do, you do, so that you can curb the repetitive cycles, negative cycles. And that's how we break these cycles. If we apply focus, that it's if we apply daily, then we will be able to move forward. Okay, so brings me to this lesson now. That is what we discussed in the morning. Now let's go to emotional resistance to focus. That is us going through this reflective exercise. Now, when I talk about a reflective exercise, this is what I mean. Reflection is about emotions. Okay? Most people don't lose focus because they're lazy. No. We mainly lose focus because focus finds a way of expressing, sorry, our emotional resistance to some things. Is there anything that you have emotionally resisted to do, or a space that you're supposed to step into, but your emotions are kind of like hindering you from stepping into unknown spaces? Focus will kind of like feel heavy because it's very demanding. Focus demands accountability. Okay. Focus demands discipline. Okay. Focus demands stillness, a level of quietness. For you to be able to focus, there has to be quiet, silence. That's the only way you'll be able to focus. Now, that will feel heavy for anyone who emotionally resists accountability. When you place your emotions ahead of discipline, let me give you a simple example. You go on a trip, let's say 4 days, 5 days, and you've set out your itinerary that this is what I'm going to do on day one. These are the activities I'm going to carry out, and your day is full. Like you've planned it well. Day two is planned, day three is planned, day four is planned. They are all planned out well, right? And you're following all the activities one step after the other, right? Now, isn't that discipline? You said you're going to wake up at 6 o'clock. Even if you're on a trip, you said you're going to wake up at 6 o'clock. Yes, and you actually did wake up on time. You did get to the places where you were supposed to go to on time, because you have set yourself that this is a trip where I am going to finish all these activities that I have set out to do. Okay? And here comes the weight of distractions. They sip in one way or the other. Now, you have the ability to say no to the distractions by setting boundaries, by having limits, by having the word no in your mouth. Because for you to be able to focus through what you have set out to do, you see, we can accumulate a lot of knowledge and information. We read and read and read, listen to all these lives, podcasts, and different um, sermons or stories that are put out there, right? But there's you accumulating knowledge, information, even when you're reading books, and there's you applying. And in the morning, I clearly told you that we are moving from understanding to application. What we have been doing all this while is we have been accumulating knowledge. We have been understanding what is the root cause of these negative behavioral patterns. Why do we find ourselves coping to these or shifting towards these defense mechanisms that we use? What exactly leads us to do the things that we do? Okay, what exactly hinders us? What exactly hinders us from flourishing in our true leadership authority? What are those wounds on our identity? What is that trauma that we have held on to so long that we need to let go? We looked at all that, and that was all information. Now, when it comes to application, that means you are moving from all this knowledge and understanding that you have received. Now you need to step into these unknown spaces and do. Because faith without works is dead. Why would we have to always accumulate a lot of information and knowledge and then we don't do? Because there's an emotion in you that is resisting this application of what you have learned. And focus will require accountability. Focus will require discipline. Focus will require you to commit, to make a decision, to say, let's go. And focus will require stillness, because if you have an itinerary of things that you're supposed to do, then you definitely need space and time to think. Okay? You don't want all this noise, be it people, places, things. You don't want that noise. You want to focus. So it comes with a weight. It may sound like just a word, but it comes with a weight because it demands accountability, it demands discipline, it demands stillness. And stillness is going to reveal what you have been avoiding. When you stay still, what you've been avoiding is going to come out. Okay? Emotions that fight focus. I want you to reflect and see, where do you lie? Okay? Do you have a fear of failure? Do you have a fear of success? Do you have a fear of responsibility? Do you have a fear of change? If there's any one of these areas that I have mentioned that apply to you, you need to sit down and get back to, where did this come from? Because distraction is it becomes, distraction for you will become an emotional relief. When you fear success, you look for a distraction. That's the emotional relief that you're going to look for. When you fear responsibility, you're going to cut short, cut corners, and look for a distraction. And I told you, my lessons are for people who want to grow, people who want to transform, those who want to move from mediocre level to a higher level. To step into your true leadership authority, it requires a level of commitment. It requires you to make a decision and know, where are my boundaries? What line am I not going to cross? Or what am I going to do? Even when I fear I have to go. It requires boldness, courage, resilience, because you'll need it, endurance, because you'll need it. But if you have a fear to take responsibility, then you won't be able to step into that leadership authority. And leadership authority doesn't necessarily mean, like, for example, a political position. No, it and everyone is assigned a sphere of leadership. Okay, in the different mountains of influence, it could be media, it could be religion, it could be family. Okay, it could be education, it could be commerce, it could be any sphere of leadership, it could be in any area, could be in commerce, business. Okay. Now, if you have been assigned this particular sphere, we have to build from in outward. We cannot build outward. Okay. Build, and then come back to the inward part. When you start by building on the inside, you become whole. You deal with all these unhealed trauma issues that you've been having. You are breaking down all the walls that have been hindering you, or a lot of weaknesses are exposed as you're building inwardly. Okay. Now, when you build from a place that, like, your whole outwardly is going to be strong. The foundation is strong. The foundation is you. The foundation is you. So build yourself first, then go out and build. Go out and do this and that and that and that. Otherwise, you're going to come back to the drawing board, okay, and say, where did I go wrong? Of course, failure is a very good thing. Mistakes are very good aspects of life, because then you move from one level to the other. But you do not want to go all the way and then come back. It's like opening up a business, and the first thing you do is buy the furniture, buy everything, and not the systems, like the control systems, the cost control, and all. You start with what needs to be done first. So, first build inwardly before you go out, so that you don't have to come back to the drawing board. And so that you don't have to look at distraction as an emotional relief because of your fear of responsibility, fear of change, fear of success. Yeah. Now, why do people return to old cycles? Ever asked yourself that question? I'm sure we all have times when we bounce back and go back to our old way of doing things, and we go back to our old patterns. Why do people go back? Relapsing is one of the topics that we're looking at. Yes, last week, part one, or last week, yeah, we looked at relapsing. Why do we relapse? Why do we go back? Every time direction comes to you, clarity comes to you, definitely resistance is going to come. And when resistance comes, when you're so scared, you're going to go back, which is relapsing. And we talked about relapsing as not only applying to people who are addicted to this, that, and that. No, not only addictions. It can be emotional relapse, it can be relational relapsing, it can be spiritual relapsing. There are different kinds of ways that we relapse, okay, in different areas. So, why do we go back to old patterns? It's because they feel familiar. And familiar kind of like feels safe, right? Even when we know that it is destructive, we find ourselves back in the old patterns because we want to be a bit comfortable. We're like, well, I'd rather be in spaces that I am aware of. But then how are you going to step into unknown spaces if you're going to have if you're going to like hug your distractions, because that is exactly what you're doing. It's an emotional relief. So are we reflecting? Are we reflecting? Destruction is an emotional coping mechanism that we need to name. If we do not name it, if we do not know what exactly comes as a distraction, and by the way, you could be so busy, but when you are actually distracted, you're busy doing very constructive things, but is that what you're supposed to do in that particular time? So I'm going to ask you a question now. I want you to uh, have these questions with you, go back with them and think about them, and maybe you can come back with them at the 4 p.m. discussion. Yeah. What is that emotion that arises whenever you try to focus? Ask yourself that question. Write it down. What emotion arises when you try to focus? What is that emotion that arises when you try to focus? Because if you name it, if you know it, and if you acknowledge it, and you know that it's a distraction, then you will know how to deal with it. It will be much easier. The second question, what are you avoiding by staying distracted? Like I said, we go back to that emotional coping mechanism because it is familiar. Okay? And the reason as to why we go back to it is because it is familiar. We feel safer in that space. So, what is it that you are avoiding by staying distracted in familiar places? Think about it and ask yourself that question. This is the time when we reflect. In the morning, we're awakening. Now we are reflecting. And this is a little bit emotional because then it gets us thinking. We need to be able to answer these questions. What is it that I am avoiding by staying distracted? Could you be knowing exactly what that could be? Hmm? Can you think about what it is that you are avoiding? Okay. Well, um, brings me to let's have some takeaways for this session. Okay, and then we'll meet again at 4 p.m. where we are now going to look at the structures. We're going to have some structured learning. We're going to have we're going to be very practical. This is now for leaders, okay? If or aspiring leaders. It's when you are awakened to something, now we know what focus is, then we start reflecting, how are my emotions resisting who I am, who I am supposed to be, my assignment, what I am supposed to do, how are my emotions affecting the things that I am supposed to, the things that are supposed to be manifesting in my life, and they're not manifesting because of my emotions. And that's what we're looking at right now. It's more of you reflecting and asking yourself these questions. Now, I want you to focus on the triggers. What triggers those emotions? What expose them, write them down. What you see, focus, triggers emotions. Okay, what is it that is triggered in you? Whenever you try to focus, something takes you off. So, what is it that focus triggers when it comes to your emotions? Expose them, write them down. Ask yourself these questions because this is for your own personal development. This is for your recovery, your identity recovery and rediscovery. Okay? What is it that focus? Every time you try to focus, what is triggered when it comes to your emotions? Do you know that distraction protects comfort? Hmm? This is what I mean. There's nothing that is birthed out of comfort. If you're birthing something great, it has to come out of you being stretched or pain. Now imagine you're very comfortable. What are you going to birth? You can't even be so creative when you are very comfortable. So you need to also name the distractions that you name those because okay, I've said focus is going to trigger emotions. Okay, look at that graph that way. Focus is going to trigger emotions. Now, what are those emotions that focus triggers? Okay, if you're able to answer that, then you're going to also answer what are those distractions because they are emotional distractions. Okay, what are they protecting? Best you look at how comfortable you are, in the different areas of your life, and then you say, this comfort is a distraction. So, what is that distraction? When you break down these Small, they may look like they're small, but they can keep you from getting where you're going. They can keep you from stepping into your true leadership authority, because growth requires emotional honesty. If you are not honest, and these are personal exercises, you're not going to do this exercise with anybody. This is a safe space whereby you get to do reflect and think about the things I'm talking about. You write them down, and then you personally go aside and you say, okay, now this makes sense. The reason as to why I'm not getting to where I want to go is because I am emotionally distracted. I am resisting. My emotions are resisting my growth. My emotions are resisting me from flourishing in marriage. My emotions are resisting me from getting into that elevated position, that promotion. My emotions are resisting me from. You have to think about all these things. They play a very huge part. And if you put them ahead of all this, then focus will lose meaning. You won't be focused. Sometimes you have to take control of these emotions. Actually, most of the times you have to not numb them. It's not good to be numb when it comes to emotions, no, because empathy is a good thing, and it's drawn from you having emotions. So you can't numb emotions completely. No. Sometimes they are good, like they have a positive side, but they also do have a negative side. Okay. And please note, every time you are experiencing resistance doesn't mean stop. No, it means continue, continue, continue. Because if you don't experience resistance, that means, how will you evaluate whether you're growing or not? How will you know whether you're doing well or not? You must find resistance. And when you find it, focus, focus, push forward, push forward. So, if you want a more structured session, if you're interested in a more structured session, that's what we're going to have at 4 p.m. on this platform. You'll join me then. Otherwise, this is it for today. This is it for now. And see you at 4 p.m. It was nice having you. Thank you very much for attending this live. I do appreciate that. Have a blessed afternoon. Bye bye.